HSE funding withheld from the Irish Wheelchair Association and pay scales in Section 39 organisation. Are you taking this one?
Oh, yeah.
I'm taking it because the Minister isn't here, so I don't know whether you wish to withdraw or not.
No, I'll
okay.
go ahead, Minister.
Thanks.
Thanks, Minister. In 1960, as you know, Minister, a small group of wheelchair users came together to form the Irish Wheelchair Association with the aim to try and improve the lives of people with physical disabilities in Ireland. The Irish Wheelchair Association has now grown to a network of 20,000 members with 2,300 staff and many more volunteers. Resource and outreach services are provided to over 2,000 people in 57 locations. 1.17 million hours of assisted caring services are provided to 1,863 people per annum. And as our website states, all IWA staff, including the CEO and senior management, are paid in compliance with Department of Health, Public Service and Health Executive HSE guidelines in relation to salary scales and rates of pay, and no additional payments are made to any member of staff. Last Friday, I met with CEO Ms Rosemary Keogh of the Irish Wheelchair Association and Ms Joan Carty, the Advocacy Officer. In this briefing, I was told that in recent weeks the HSE advised that 20% of the IWA funding will be withheld until they sign a service arrangements, and 20% of the funding has now been withheld in the March payments. And this is very significant, of course, as the CEO says, no service could, and I quote, no service could sustain such a cut without impact on services, and ultimately it's the people with disabilities and their families who will suffer. The Irish Wheelchair Association, along with Rehab, Enable and many smaller bodies, are so-called Section 39 organisations. This means under Section 39 of the Health Act 2004, these voluntary providers signed up to service-level agreements and received funding to provide certain services. Those agencies, of which in 2014 there were more than 1,800, are part-funded under Section 39 of the Health Act. And the HSE says, and I quote, under Section 38, the HSE may enter into an arrangement with a service provider on its behalf, and under Section 39, the HSE may give assistance to a person or body to provide a service that's similar or ancillary to a service that the Executive may provide. But on the 3rd of May last, in a PQ reply to Minister Harris, he stated, and I quote, any individuals employed by these Section 39 organisations are not HSE employees, and therefore the HSE has no role in determining the salaries or other terms and conditions applying to these staff, end quote. And he goes on to say, of course, and I quote, that Section 39 staff are not subject to the provisions of the Public Service Agreements or the FEMPI legislation. But in this reply, of course, your Minister Harris, and it is regretful he's not here this evening, but I appreciate that Minister Byrne is here. But in his reply, of course, he was clearly ignoring, Minister, the earlier decisions of the HSE and his own predecessors, as the HSE did in fact impose pay cuts upon Section 39 staff in 2009, and previously the pay scales had been linked for many years. It seems the Minister wants to have one rule when cuts must be imposed and another rule when restoration is due. Corla, clearly the Irish Wheelchair Association's salaries are linked to HSE pay scales, and Section 39 staff were in fact treated like public servants. It is also clear that Section 39 organisations' pay scales have been linked to HSE Section 38 pay scales for over 15 years. And the Irish Wheelchair Association, of course, informed me that the HSE cut funding to Section 39 organisations in 2009 and instructed them to impose pay cuts in order to guarantee sustainable services. But under the Lansdowne Road Agreement, public sector pay is finally beginning to be restored, yet the HSE has confirmed that no funding is available to Section 39 organisations to meet the cost of pay restoration measures required. So the HSE decision, Corla, creates an intolerable situation for the Irish Wheelchair Association, Rehab, Enable, Ireland and the other bodies concerned. The result is that home support workers and other workers in the large Section 39 organisations are doing the exact same work but receiving different levels of pay depending on whether they are employed by a Section 38 or a Section 39 organisation. Equally urgent, Minister, is the fact that the IWA has been unable to meet the cost of the €1.34 million needed for pay restoration under the Lansdowne Road Agreement this year, nor was it able to meet the €290,000 increase last year. As such, it is said that, and I quote, this impacts seriously and immediately on our ability to fulfil our responsibility under the service arrangements, as well as the standards required by statutory agencies such as IWA, and therefore the IWA was unable to sign the service arrangement by the end of February. So the Minister Harris, who unfortunately isn't with us, he did say in February, I think, to the Irish Wheelchair Association Minister that he wanted a quiet and quick resolution of this matter, which has put putting IWA and rehab staff and Enable Ireland staff under intolerable pressure. And I'd urge you to ask him to make sure he gets a settlement very quickly. Thanks, Can.
To apologise for ministers who can't be here, Deputy Minister McGrath. I thank Deputy Broughan for raising an important issue today and will outline the current position on the situation. The Irish Wheelchair Association is funded under Section 39 of the Health Act 2004. The HSE has in place service level agreement with providers funded under the Section 39 of the Health Act 2004 that sets out the level of service to be provided for the grant to be individual organisations and requirements in relation to the standard of care. The HSE has established a governance framework to cover funding relationships with a non-statutory agency. It is the policy of the HSE that all funding arrangements under Section 39 agency are formalised by completing with this governance framework, which has two different components. Component 1 is the service level agreement that is signed every 3 years by both parties and set out legal requirements that the agencies must comply with to receive funding for the provision of services. Part 2 is to set out a schedule which will be completed and signed by agencies, the agency and HSE, which sets out the details of the service and the exact funding that the HSE is providing for the delivery of the service. This set of schedules also identify the quality standard and best practice guidelines to be adhered to in the provision of all services, along with the process for managing complaints in relation to service provision. The HSE has implemented a measure whereby agencies who have not completed the necessary governance arrangement process within the required time frame of 1st March 2017, 20% withheld of funding is applied. Every effort was made by the HSE to encourage agencies to complete this process within the framework, including extending the framework time to the 1st of April for some agencies. With regard to the Irish Wheelchair Association, significantly, this organisation was unable to complete these governance arrangements outlined above. Consequently, 20% of their funding under the SLA has been withheld. To be very clear, this is not a funding cut or fine. The full funding will be returned to the agency on completion of the governance agreement process. The HSE has advised that the refusal to comply with the government agency arrangements due to pay restoration issues is not acceptable to the Executive. With regard to the matter relating to pay of staff in the IWA, it should be noted that the individuals employed by the Section 39 organisations are not HSE employees. As such, the HSE has no role in determining their salaries or other terms and conditions applied to these staff. The staff concerned are not subject to the control of the Department of Health and they are not classified as public servants. Staff in Section 39 agencies were not subject to provision of public service agreements of the FEMPI legislation, which imposed the associated pay reduction. Accordingly, any arrangement offered by each service provider in relation to its employee terms and conditions, including rates of pay, may vary. The HSE acknowledges the significant savings in effectiveness services provided has made since 2008. The health service as a whole must operate within the parameter of funding available to it. Given the current economic environment, there is challenges for all stakeholders, including the HSE, voluntary service providers like the Irish Wheelchair Association, services which are being used and their families. Service users and their families. I'll come back to the Deputy when he comes back.
Thank you very much, Minister. Deputy Broughan.
I thank the Minister for Minister Harris's reply, but I think it's totally disingenuous and doesn't impact on how grossly unfair the situation is to the Wheelchair Association, Rehab, Enable Ireland and the other bodies. I'd also like to note, of course, that the Irish Wheelchair Association has entered a dispute resolution process with the HSE, and the SIPTU Trade Union, of course, has rightly referred the matter to the Workplace Relations Commission. I understand that the Chief Executive of IWA, Ms Rosemary Keogh, had her first meeting with HSE HSE today, following a letter she sent to them on the 4th of May, indicating that as per clause 33 of the Service Arrangement 2015 to 2018 dispute resolution, that the Irish Wheelchair Association were beginning the dispute resolution process. And secondly, of course, the IWA is a member of the Not-for-Profit Association, and the NFPA, of course, has been attempting to find a resolution to this problem since last September, and representatives of the Not-for-Profit Association have met with representatives from HSE, including Mr Pat Healy, Mr Cathal Morgan and Ms Marion Meany on March 29th last. But clearly, over many years, Minister, HSE did instruct Section 39 organisations to come online in line with HSE pay scales. They did do that as per instruction. During the crash then, IWA, the Irish Wheelchair Association and other bodies, they were told to make the FEMPI reductions. They made those reductions. Now Section 39 organisation staffs have been excluded from Haddington Road and the Lansdowne Road National Pay Agreements, most unfairly. And I think SIPTU Trade Union has rightly looked for restoration for pay scales for these staffs and moved the matter to the Workplace Relations Commission. I noticed that you mentioned a 3-year service agreement, which IWA has felt unable to sign because they simply don't have the funding, because they have to meet the additional funding. Now, I understand, Minister, we're talking here really, Ceann Comhairle, a matter of about €5 million per annum over the time of this service level agreement to settle the situation, to resolve the situation with the hard-working, very valiant staffs of the Wheelchair Association, Rehab and Enable Ireland. It's a small sum of money. I think the Minister should resolve this as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ceann.
Thanks, Les Ceann. And again, to Deputy Broughan, and I understand your frustration, but I do have to say I'm very familiar with the work of the Irish Wheelchair Association, and like any organisation, no matter what department we're in, we're all governed by certain arrangements. And if there has been a problem with the government arrangements with the Irish Wheelchair Association, it has been said, and it has been said in reply, that the HSE are willing to talk to them and try and resolve the matter as they can, as quickly as possible. But there are rules and regulations, and like in the past, when people weren't adhering to certain governance issues, there were problems in all services right across the board. So I do believe that it is important that any agency providing a service should meet the governance standards. Now, can I just finish? There's
no governance issue here. The issue is your department and the HSE and the Department of Public Expenditure. That's the issue.
Okay. Right. Well. Can I just finish, Ceann Comhairle? Well, just to raise, the Deputy raised a number of issues which I've taken note of, and I will bring them back to the Minister. But I think it clearly outlines in the reply from the Minister that the HSE has no control over the salaries for people who are in Section 39. But I will relay back to the fact that the Deputy has said that SIPTU organisation is taking it up as well, and I will relay all the comments back to him and ask him to come back to him.
Thank you very much, Minister. Our fourth